This is Training Insights, episode 22. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Training Insights. This is episode 22. My name is Kevin McGowan, and as usual, this fantastic show brought to you by Training Magazine. Go to trainingmag.com to listen or to read lots and lots of amazing stuff about training and professional development. Today, we'll speak with kind of a neighbor of mine. He's based in Ottawa, Ontario as well. His name's Pete Grieve, and he's the program manager for the local Project Management Institute organization, PMI, if you're not too familiar with them. He is the guy who runs a lot of the training programs and lunch and learns, the whole programming side of that organization locally. And he is in charge of organizing their annual October PMI Symposium here in Ottawa. I actually had the great pleasure of speaking at that last October in 2017 to a big crowd of a few hundred people, so that was really fun. But I wanted to ask him more specifically about how you do that. Like, everybody goes to these conferences, everybody shows up and you enjoy them and you learn a lot and you get good food and all that kind of stuff. But I wanted to get a little bit more of the practical, how do you actually go ahead and plan something like that, a massive training program and the food and the venue and all that kind of stuff. So Pete has some great anecdotes. So let's go off to my town, Ottawa, and we'll talk with Pete Grieve.
So all is well. You're in the same town I'm in. You're in Ottawa. So how's life treating you in the capital city?
Well, at the beginning of February, so this is the time where we all start hating the snow a lot and are looking forward to spring.
Yeah. I know we got about another 6 inches of snow or something on my driveway this past weekend. So yeah, I'm getting tired of it myself.
Yeah, exactly. It always hits about this time of the year where I think, why do I live in this city?
But you've been here a while. How long have you been in Ottawa?
I've been here for 11 years now.
11 years. And how long have you been working with the PMI OVOC?
Well, I've been a volunteer for probably about 7 or 8 years there in various little project roles and that. And I was elected to the board 2 years ago. And so I've been doing the programs, the events, the professional development events and seminars and symposium for the 2 years now.
Wow. And how much effort kind of per week do you say you put into this stuff? It sounds like a lot.
It
so
can
how much stuff are you working on, I guess, is maybe a better question.
Yeah. No, it definitely can be. Like, people show up for the 3-day symposium and they think, boy, this was fairly good. And they don't realize that about 11 months worth of work goes into it by the time you negotiate the contract for the venue, because a lot of these larger venues are actually booked a year in advance.
Yeah.
So, and then, start with the call to the speakers, and they start giving their ideas, and you vet out the certain speakers and that, and you get an agenda and a theme in that worked out, and then you work through all the other logistics and that to have it. So by the time the third day of the symposium happens in October, there is nobody happier than me that it's over.
And then you start up again for the next one, though, right? So.
I usually have about 6 weeks or 2 months there to kind of, well, not even that, because we do post-event surveys. And, both from the speakers and from the participants and the exhibitors and the volunteers to see in constant project management land how we can improve and through lessons learned and what have you. So by the time those surveys are created, sent out, come back, compiled, and then I have to do up the final actuals compared to the budget and see how well I stuck to my budget.
Right. Well, let's go to the beginning, because we're talking about learning events, whether it's a 3-day symposium or like a 1-hour lunch and learn or half a day or various configurations. How do you go about sorting out the theme? Let's talk about the 3-day thing, because that's a bigger thing to deal with. So how do you decide on a theme and how to just do that basic level stuff before you even get into the details?
What I try to do is pay attention to what's going on in the marketplace. So, lately there's been a lot of talk about agile. There's been a lot of talk about the evolving role of the project manager or what have you. So I usually just pick some sort of theme like that that's flexible enough so that you can stretch it to accommodate most of the topics in that, but has some sort of grassroots theme to it type thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when you have that, and it only makes sense. It can't be too rigid and too specific,
right?
For a 3-day event, certainly. But then what's your process? I mean, this is a learning event. How do you manage to find speakers, and then how do you manage to pitch those speakers to your intended audience, these project managers in greater Ottawa area or even further out?
Well, I'll tell you, I've been fairly lucky there. It does make me nervous at times, especially 2 or 3 of the speakers that I booked for this past symposium. I traveled to Montreal. They were recommended to me by some event planners that I work with. And I went to Montreal. I heard them speak. I really liked their message. So I, signed and booked them. And then you get worried that you're selecting all these speakers and the topics in that, and are you tailoring it only towards your like versus the general liking of 420 people that usually attend our symposium as well.
Right.
So I do get a little bit nervous partway through that it's either going to be a great success or a bomb, and if it is, then it's because I've done it all to my liking of topics and speakers and what have you, and maybe not to the masses. But thankfully, right. I based on the feedback I got, they seem to share my opinions.
That's good. I mean, I've been to a few of the events, certainly, and I can attest to that personally as well. Why or how do you go about the rest of it? Like a conference, a 3-day conference, a massive undertaking. Mm-hmm. So there's the learning component, obviously, and that's its own trouble, whatever, a load of work to work on. But there's all the other stuff too that I don't think people always think about when they show up to a 3-day conference or symposium. How do you approach the rest of it, all that day-to-day or hour-to-hour logistical stuff?
Well, it's kind of, looking at what's worked in the past and what needs to be refined. Like, for example, this past year, we used to have the keynote speakers kick off the days. So it may start at 8:30 in the morning. And I found last year, like in 2016, that I was watching people come into the room because they either had kid drop-off, stuck in traffic, what have you.
Yeah.
And
thank you so much,
I
Pete.
kind of made the decision going, you know what, let's have the keynotes at 10 a.m. because we'll have a warm-up act
so I really enjoy talking
to kind of, greet people and get things going in that. But then people
challenges
that
and
are
struggles
here to
and the
listen
fun
to
of
some of
organizing a large-scale
the
event like that.
professional
So I hope you learned something. I sure did. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, maybe you'd like to be on the show, let me know. You can go to kevinmcgowan.ca and drop me a line.
So it's kind of paying attention to
or,
the
of course,
overall
just go to trainingmag.com and listen to this whenever.
Even when it comes to
so
selecting of the speakers and that, I try to pay attention to. I mean, anybody can be good on paper when they're submitting an abstract saying, I really want to talk about this.
Sure.
So I like to either have heard them speak or watch a YouTube video or something that's saved to their LinkedIn profile to get a sense as to whether or not they actually can communicate. And they can actually, in an informative and entertaining way, get their point across. Because there's a lot of academic people that submit abstracts or topics for the symposium there, and traditionally they can actually lack some enthusiasm, or they're so technical in nature that it's not a overly positive experience for the listener.
Right. How do you kind of weed I hate to say weed them out, but how do you weed them out, and how do you make that call? Say, okay, this person is going to be, it's an interesting topic, but you need a bit of that I guess that star quality or something on the stage, right, to capture people. How do you kind of make that call?
Yeah, unfortunately, I've had to in a couple cases there, and usually they're not surprised by the message that they're getting, and so it's just being able to say it tactfully, and every speaker has a review done on them, so we actually have some scores from one year to another, and even if a particular speaker is a superstar, I don't like to book them any more than 2 years in a row, or else it looks like I'm going back to the same talent pool. Yeah. And so I like to keep it fresh by having different speakers. I bring in speakers from out of town for a lot of the keynotes and that, because a lot of the local Ottawa area speakers there have done the circuit 2 or 3 times, and some people feel maybe gypped, for lack of a better word, that that they're listening to the same speaker for the 4th year or 4 times if they have a 10 or 15 year career.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it has to be new and interesting, or people aren't going to show up, basically.
Yeah.
Right? That's your concern. But about all the other logistical stuff, because I know, the learning side, you have to, pick the right people and get the right mix and the right subjects and base it on maybe some kind of loose theme. But the other side of it, what's your kind of greatest challenge that you think people maybe don't understand when they walk into a room like that?
I think it's all the details that go into it, right down to the snack and meal planning. Right. Where we look at the meals and we look at the snacks and we make sure that they're healthy and that they hit all the different needs out there. Every year we get more and more requests for gluten-free and vegetarian and that, and although somewhat difficult to not really difficult for the hotel or the conference center to actually accommodate, but they tend to serve the same thing over, every lunch for 3 days, in which case the person is feeling, like, they're eating out of trough or whatever kind of thing. And even the snacks that we had in the past there seemed to be kind of one theme where it was kind of sugar related or what have you. And nowadays there's just as many people who want the healthy alternatives of cheeses and fruits and yogurts, along with those of us who like the donuts and the muffins and the cookies and that. So try to split it up half to half, and so to make everybody happy, because surprisingly, like my food budget is probably the highest expense of the symposium there, because a conference center just doesn't charge for the food, but also for the people that serve it and the tablecloths and what have you. Right. So, when they quote a price, like, for example, one of the, was on a cupcake basis there, and they serve these gourmet cupcakes, and they charge $12 per cupcake. Now, that includes the hidden costs of serving and napkins and what have you kind of thing, right? And linen.
But that's, you look at that and you go, oh, my God.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm standing there with the people there, and there was one nice lady who was standing next to me, and she took a bite of her cupcake, and she looked at the filling in it, and it wasn't to her liking, and she threw it in the garbage. And I'm standing beside her, knowing that I've paid $12 times 300 people for these cupcakes, and I had a quick flash whether or not I was going to grab the cupcake from the garbage and make her eat it. And then I decided that wouldn't probably go over very well.
No.
But
that's a great way to lose your gig, for sure.
You do have those kind of flashes when you kind of walk by and see how much broccoli is left, or is all the chicken gone? Okay, good to know next year. More chicken, less broccoli. So it's a constant kind of refinement.
Yeah, I mean, it's never going to be perfect, and you're never going to please everybody. Especially, 400, 500 people in a room, it's impossible. But I mean, you obviously trend and make some alterations to try and do better and better. But you know, you're never going to get 100% on that kind of thing.
Surprisingly, food is high on people's lists of overall satisfaction.
Yeah.
So you can go cheap, and you think that you're saving money, but you're really going to impact people's pleasure and whether or not they're paying attention in the afternoon based on a high-carb lunch or what have you.
Yeah.
So, that's what I get the most comments on is food and then speaker quality.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ultimately, you're right. I mean, ultimately it comes down to it's a learning event. It's a networking event, but it's a learning event as well. And if you want the reputation to be solid, so hey, wow, they had great food at this thing, and that's a nice add-in. But really, it comes down to being really top priority because you're right. If people get that super heavy lunch or that's too much sugar and they crash at 2:00, and maybe they're not going to be learning as much or networking as much, or as politely.
Right.
Later in the afternoon, right? People get angry. So you're working on the next one coming in October, the Next Big Symposium?
Yes.
And at what stage are you for this now, do you think? Are we just starting off?
I am, really just kind of starting off there. We're signed the contract for the venue, and, and that's the other thing, too, that your group might be interested in, too, is there's never such a thing as a perfect venue.
Right.
And, in Ottawa, we have a nice central location there. And it's got free parking and it's, but yet I constantly get complaints that we should have it further west, further south, further downtown. The room is
at my
hot.
house.
Yeah, exactly. The room is too hot. The room is too cold. And to the point where last year I almost put into the registration, the room will be kept at 69 degrees for the comfort of the speakers. Feel free to wear layers so that you can either remove a coat if you are hot or put on the coat if you are chilly. But yes, that's number 3 on the list is the venue and the room temperature.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And all the things you don't think about when you just attend this event, all the stuff going on in the background.
Especially these large venues that if there's a temperature change, I mean, somebody explained to me in the heating and cooling business there that a large conference center or a facility like a school or a hospital, it can take like up to 3 days to get a temperature regulated if there's a quick change in the temperature. So if it goes from hot to cold overnight, it's difficult to get that back on, the morning of the very next day of the temperature change, right?
Right. Well, I'll ask you one more thing. What would you ask, or what would you want people to know most of all when they walk into a room like that? They paid their registration fee. They're showing up to go to your conference. What's that one thing you'd really like them to know and understand about the whole process?
As I've always said, as somebody who's worked retail and bartended and waiting tables there, I always think that somebody should have to do one of those 3 jobs so that they have an understanding of what the service industry is like.
Yeah.
I also think everybody should be required. When I have my own country, everybody, instead of going into the military for a year, they're going to have to volunteer for a nonprofit to actually put together this type of a conference there, and then maybe they won't be so absurd with some of their requests. The one that still sticks in my head from the past year is the fact that, as I said, we have like 400 people that attend the symposium, and I usually run 2 tracks of 2 different topics. I try to have a technical topic there that a project manager may like, and then a soft skill, a leadership skill or something in the other room going on. And I had one person who actually wanted to have all presentations printed off and available for them when they walked in so that they could make notes on the presentation.
Mm.
And I went, okay, well, that's fine, except for I don't know who's going into what room, so I would have to have 400 copies of each presentation, and like maybe half of them or 30% of them would just be tossed into recycling afterwards.
Oh, exactly.
And they just kind of looked at me and they went, yeah, but I would have something to write on. So those are the types of things you just kind of smile and go, kill a tree lately?
Oh, fantastic. Well, Pete, I'll leave it there for now. But thanks so much for sharing some of the stories and the ideas with me. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it.
And thank you so much, Pete. It's a pleasure, as always, to talk to Pete. He's a great guy. He and I have become buddies over the last couple of years. So I really enjoy talking to him at any time, but to talk and hear some stories about the actual challenges and struggles and the fun of organizing a large-scale event like that. So I hope you learned something. I sure did. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, maybe you'd like to be on the show, let me know. You can go to kevinmcgowan.ca and drop me a line through there. Or, of course, just go to trainingmag.com and listen to this whenever you want. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.